Okay, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you're joining from. Thank you very much for joining this webinar, dealing with difficult negotiation, engaging stakeholders. Maybe a few housekeeping rules. Everybody's muted by default by my colleagues here. You can use the chat to say hello, where you're joining from. Please post your question on the Q&A. I will not be able to respond to all the questions for obvious reasons. We're expecting more than 200 people today, but I will try to deal with the most often asked questions as we go. If there is a hot topic which I did not address, either by lack of time or because I haven't seen it on the screen, just please make sure you drop it by mail and I'll get back to you as soon as I can as we go. My email address is on the presentation. So we'll try to make the best of your time with us today. This presentation is about dealing with difficult behaviors. The more we go, the more we'll have difficult behaviors. The more we go, the more we'll have culture shock. The more we go, we'll have tricky type of negotiation. And we have to know how to navigate through murky waters. It's not that people are out there to get you or to be mean to you. It's just simply human nature, and this is what's all about. You see the title of the presentation is Dealing with Difficult Negotiation and Engaging Stakeholders. So there's really two parts of it. Difficult negotiation, complicated, complex when it comes to human behavior, and engaging stakeholders. So I would just tackle the engaging stakeholders, and then as we go, we will develop the dealing with difficult negotiation. When I say engaging stakeholders, you see right away the question mark. And the question mark is very simple. Why do people engage with us? And the answer is two. Either we're super smart or we're super kind, and that's all. Super smart, it means our competence. Super kind is our character. To be super smart actually is a gift. Most of us are born smart. Of course, we improve, but we are born smart. It's a gift. To be super kind, this is a choice. Those among us, the happy few, I have to admit, among us, who are super smart and who make the right choices to be kind, are agile people. And this word, if we are if we have Alzheimer at the age of 95, this word agility should be tattooed on our brain. How to survive, how to deal with different people, different culture, how to get our family to be agile if we are agile ourselves. And this is one hell of a challenge to all of us. So on one hand, we have people who are super kind, we have people who are super smart, and on the other hand, we have people who are super humble, but still super confident. And when we mix all that, we have this kind of agility compass. If we take people who are smart and who are confident, this is the daring part of our personality. If we take people who are kind and humble, this is the caring part. And we all have a daring and a caring part. Sometimes the daring part is huge and the caring part is small. Sometimes it's the opposite, but this is how we are. And we try to improve a little bit as we understand more. It's useless to go to humble people and to be super daring with them. They don't know how to deal with it. On my front screen, I've put two books. I'm sure lots of you have seen them before, but they're still good reading for the summer. One, of course, is the bestseller, Thinking Fast and Slow of Daniel Kahneman, which explained the biases and the way behavior economics work. Another one, which doesn't appear here, could be Richard Taylor bestseller, Misbehaving. Both of them are Nobel Prize in economics, Richard Taylor and Daniel Kahneman. And the other one is The Power of Habits, Our Bad or Good Habits. And as we go, we develop better habits, or we try to be sensitive to what I would call our bad habits. So let me take you through the first slide, and probably one of the most important among them all, and it's the fact that when we negotiate with people, depending on their culture, or this is really irrelevant, we should not ask people to lose face. If you're asking people to lose face, it's like ask them to make a good choice or to choose dignity, and people will go with dignity. very often, unless if they're really dying to make their living. Most of human beings will choose dignity. I have two examples. These two examples are 3,000 years apart, and you will see that it's irrelevant to be from one nationality or the other. What happens 3,000 years ago or a few years back is the same thing. And the example goes as follows, and it talks to me because it concerns my own country, Egypt. For years, the Egyptian and the Akkadian living in the minor part of Asia, south of Turkey, north of Syria, has been in fight. They've been in war for years. And then in 1259 BC, King Ramses II, who was a very important king in Egypt because he ruled over 6 years as a pharaoh, and the King Hutasali III decided it was about time to come to some kind of peace agreement, stop killing. And they signed this peace agreement in Kadesh. And Kadesh is the name of the town where the peace agreement was signed after the Battle of Kadesh in the southern part of Turkey. And when we look at these two outcomes of the peace agreement, it's exactly the same thing because it is the same contract, except one little detail. When we look at the Egyptian part written in hieroglyph, and we can see it's carved on stone in Luxor, it's written that the Akkadian came asking for peace. When we look at the Akkadian part, and we have the original in Turkey, in the Museum of Archaeology in Istanbul, we saw it's written that the Egyptian came begging us for peace. So you can be Hutasali III or the fantastic Pharaoh Ramses II. When it comes to face saving, everybody wants to declare victory. It's just human being behavior, I would say. And then when we fast forward 3,000 years and we go to the Cuba Missile Crisis, 1962, for those who probably everybody here is too young to remember that, but in a nutshell, the American in 1960, under the guidance of Dwight Eisenhower, had put some Jupiter missile in Turkey and Italy, facing Russia, the Soviet Union. Well, the leader at that time, Nikita Khrushchev, decided to do the same thing, and he sent SAM-2. SAM stands for soil-air missile. He decided to send some SAM-2, SAM-3 missile in San Cristobal, Cuba. And on the 16th of October, 1962, a U-2 plane belonging to the CIA, flying very high altitude, 20 kilometers, was able to take photos in San Cristobal of what looked like SAM-2, SAM-3 missile, only 90 nautical miles from Florida. And this triggered what we call the Cuba Missile Crisis. And we were really on the brink of a nuclear war. When this whole thing came down with two peaks, I won't have the time to talk about the two peaks, but just one of them is a B-59 diesel-powered submarine. A Soviet one was about to launch a nuclear bomb. Luckily, this does not happen. It deserves another webinar to talk about it. And the other one is that the Soviet shot down one of the CIA planes, which was commanded by Captain Rudolf Henderson, who, of course, perished in this. So we reached a peak, and then it came down with some kind of understanding. When we look at the memoir written by Robert Francis Kennedy, we could see two things. First of all, Robert Francis Kennedy, who was the Attorney General at that time, but also the brother of JFK, the president, became very good friend with Anatoly Dobrynin. And Anatoly Dobrynin was the Soviet ambassador to Washington, who just arrived in 1962, and who would stay for 24 years until 1986 in Washington. So there was some kind of third channel. So Robert Francis Kennedy became good friend with the Soviet ambassador, while JFK had to deal with the Soviet leader. So first of all, the first learning is, do we have a third channel? Do we have a capacity to pass messages which are not public? Because when we are in the spotlight, things might get harsh or out of control, either under pressure or under biases. But the interesting stuff, if you visit the Kennedy Library out of Boston, and lots of things became public now, you could see what Robert Francis Kennedy wrote about his brother, and you could see it on the screen here, and it's written, what guided Kennedy was an effort not to disgrace Khrushchev, not to humiliate the Soviet Union. So if lesson one was never to humiliate anybody, lesson two would be, please make sure you have a third channel. Never burn bridges, and it's extremely hard. And it's part of our social capital to know which button to press, who to talk to if we need to pass messages which are not public messages. Let me go to this slide here and show you the importance of luck. What we don't control, what we don't control. Is this a good decision? André-François Raffray thought he had a good deal in 1965 when he agreed to pay a 90-year-old woman named Jeanne Calment 500 euros. It was in French franc, of course, in 65, a month until she died to acquire her grand apartment in Arles in the south of France, department number 13, what we call les Bouches-du-Rhône. Such rente viagère contracts are common in France, perfectly legal. The elderly owner gets to enjoy a monthly income from the buyer who gambles on getting a real estate bargain, hoping that the owner doesn't live too long. So it's a win-win. The person who needs an income enjoy her or his house while getting an income, and the person is betting on this person, saying, well, one day this person will pass away and the real estate property will become mine. If I recall it right, in 1965, André Raffray was 47. He picked somebody who's 90 years old, so perfectly well processed, as perceived by André Raffray. But look what happened here. 1995, 30 years down the road, Raffray himself died at the age of 77, and he had paid more than 180,000 euros, of course, in French franc, for an apartment he never got to live in. On the same day, Jeanne Calment, then the world's oldest known living person, on 120, died on foie gras. So this is some kind of defreezing our brain, saying luck is everywhere. We cannot control it. We just have to accept that we don't control few things. By accepting, we gain control, because when we accept that we don't control, we are on our toes. We are sensitive to weak signal, what's happening close to us. If we are in this wrong belief that we control everything, we might be falling in one of our biases, which is overconfidence. So please, lesson number 3 would be, just accept that we don't control. Luck factor is everywhere, and it's just simply part of our life. Bad outcome, well, it's just the chance, a mix of chance and skill, and the chance was against Raffray here and pro Madame Calment. A decision is as good as the process to arrive to it. Everybody complains about their memory. Nobody complains about their judgment. This is La Rochefoucauld, French critique, philosopher of the 17th century. And this is exactly it. Nobody looks back and said, my judgment was poor. They say, I don't remember, I don't recall the facts, and so on. But actually, one of the things should be, my judgment is poor, and I should learn from that judgment. If we don't do that, we keep doing the same mistake. And wrongly enough, we call it learning from mistake. This is not learning from mistake. When we do the same exact mistake, it has another name. It's called systematic failure. So let's learn from mistake and try to be humble enough to say, on that particular day, my judgment was bad, and there is nothing wrong with it. I like the job, but I hate making decisions. When you look at this behavior, it's deeper than what it looks like. Actually, when you look at this person in front of the switch, he can just do on and off. What I call deeper than that this person is very likely not to do anything. If the switch is on, he will leave it on. If the switch is off, he will leave it off. And this is what we call the statical bias. People leave things as they find them because it's much easier. So typically, this is what he should do, but this is what he would do because of the statical bias. And our job as leaders, managers, whatever, is just to do easy fixes, easy tweaks. Don't expect people to change drastically. They will be miserable and they will underperform. What we need to do is to get good people just to do small tweaks, easy fixes. This is the best way. Warm-up exercise, just to put you a little bit in the mood of behavior economics, and then I will go through, I would say, 5 or 6 engaging rules, and every time we'll try to link them to why engaging with stakeholders can help us deal with complex negotiation. I was looking at the public information, the best or the biggest by asset European companies in 2001, and I stretched my research to 2011, and this is what I found in 2001. Daimler, Chrysler, BP, Total, Fina, Elf, AXA, Royal Dutch Shell, Volkswagen, Allianz, Siemens, E.ON, Deutsche Bank. And then I looked 10 years down the road, 2011, and this is what I found, again, by asset. This is public information. You can get it from the FT or any of these organizations who are doing a great job in supplying information, financial information. And this is what I saw. BHP Billiton, Royal Dutch Shell, which was number 5, went up to number 2. Nestle, HSBC, Vodafone, Rio Tinto, BP, Novartis, Roche, Telefonica. When we look at this, 2 things come to our mind. First of all, BP, which went from number 2 plummeting down to number 7, and the reason is very simple, is what happened in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010, but nobody remembers Texas City, Texas explosion in 2005. Which means what? Which means when we see a brand, part of our brain would say, this brand is linked to this accident. BP, Gulf of Mexico, Deepwater Horizon explosion. What about Texas City, Texas explosion in 2005? Unless you are part of this kind of business, research, oil and gas, you don't know about it. The other one, which is very interesting, is Shell. When BP went down, Shell just took the place, went up from number 5 to number 2, while BP went from number 2 down to number 7. Novartis is also very interesting company. I'm in Switzerland here, I'm in Lausanne, Novartis is not too far. And Novartis is this merge in 1996 between Ciba-Geigy and another company, and the result is Novartis, and this is a huge value creation, almost 14 billion Swiss francs value creation in one day, and it's still sustainable until today. And the word sustainable means it all. If you Google on what we do at IMD, you will see that there is a sustainability award called the IMD Pictet Sustainability Award. So if we look at this and we look at Novartis and we look at sustainability, I think we should also consider that whatever we're doing is for 3 things. Either we are creating value by negotiation, or we are sustaining value, or we are capturing value. So if you're not creating value, if you're not capturing value, if you're not sustaining value, why are we negotiating? We are just wasting time and resources. If I take this glass of water and I give it to you, I lost it. If I have an idea and I give it to you, I still have my idea. So I can share value. And sustaining value is the way I do it ethically, either selling or claiming, if I do it ethically, which means that successful, sustainable negotiation is a mix of 2 things, is a mix of psychology and economics. No buyer wants to overpay, no seller wants to undersell. This is economics, but the psychology, the trust part, the emotional part, the empathy part is becoming more and more important. Why? Because prices are becoming more and more available. So there's some kind of prices sharing in the world, and everybody could go to on internet and see the price of things, or anybody could ask for advice, and it doesn't cost anything to ask for advice by mail. And actually huge companies are doing now e-auction. So transparency make price available, it's price efficient. Of course, in some countries more than others, but the idea is the psychological part of negotiation is becoming more and more important. And that's why I'm just looking at Novartis and saying value creation, value capture, and sustaining value. I've done the same exercise for you. By the way, when I said when I spoke about Novartis and I said the merge between Ciba-Geigy, I forgot to say it's Ciba-Geigy and Sandoz in 1996, which led to the creation of Novartis. So Ciba-Geigy and Sandoz coming together. I've done the same exercise in the US, but the US is a big market, so I took it over 100 years. I started in 1910, and I looked at 2010, and this is what I found here. US Steel was 4 times bigger than number 2, Standard Oil of New Jersey. Of course, you know all these companies, probably have been doing business with them in the last year or two. The answer is no. They all disappeared, and nobody is too big to fail. Even US Steel disappeared. Some of them got embedded in other company, but the idea that all these beautiful companies disappeared. And when we look at why do companies fail, I would like to highlight only 2 reasons. Of course, there are so many reasons, but I would like to highlight only 2 of them, which seems to me pretty vivid, pretty striking. One is corporate arrogance. If there is one word to be completely banned from our behavior, is arrogance. So we should just not be arrogant at all in negotiation, and simply life and the markets is like a wheel. We can be heroes, but we can also go to zeros. So humility is good in all time. Actually, the very foxy, very seasoned negotiator are extremely soft-spoken and humble. The other one, what concerns me as somebody teaching crisis, safety and negotiation, is our capacity to look for weak signals and to decode them. Some people will go through this room and leave and they will not see anything. Some other people will go to the elevator and they will just capture, they will suck a photo. They even remember what type of luggage tag you have on your luggage. Somebody who flew Air France, somebody who flew Emirates or KLM or whatever. They suck this info. They're very sensitive to weak signals, and then they combine this info with other info, and they see the puzzle before anybody else. It's a gift, but we can work it on. And I'm going to give you a very striking example of those who are sensitive to weak signals. Again, there's nothing wrong with not being sensitive to weak signals, but those of us who have this capacity, this gift, this is worth a lot of value in negotiation. In France, there is 2 big car races. One called Le Grand Prix de Monaco in the southeast of France, Monte Carlo, and the other one is called Les 24 Heures du Mans. Le Mans is a middle-sized town in the west of France, and every summer there's this big race which lasts 24 hours. On Saturday, 11th of June, 1955, around 6 p.m., a big explosion happened, and the head of the French team, Jean Levegh, came driving his new Mercedes SLR 300 called the Silver Arrow. As he entered a very special curve, pretty risky, he loses control, he hit the pits, and his car explodes. In 1 minute, it kills 84 people. 1,000 feet behind him, 300 meters, the world champion, Juan Manuel Fangio from Argentina, but part of the French team, coming driving the same car, the Mercedes SLR 300, the Silver Arrow. And just before he enters the curve, he decided to stop, and he saves his life and the life of his co-pilot and people behind him. The same day, the BBC is interviewing Mr. Fangio, telling him, Mr. Fangio, what made you stop? You haven't even seen the accident yet. He said, I am the world champion. I'm 50 years old today. He was born in 1905. We were in 1955. He said, probably this is my last race, or at least my last important race. I'm coming driving my brand new SLR 300 Mercedes, 8 cylinders, 3 liters for the first time to the market. I'm driving at 205 kilometers per hour back in 1955. I'm about to take this dangerous curve. I'm looking at the spectators and they're looking elsewhere. Something must be wrong. So I decided to stop. Do you imagine? He has the capacity to over-focus on his task, which is driving fast and taking this curve while trying to avoid the pits and other cars, and still he's sensitive to weak signals, looking at the spectators' behavior and decoding for him. I don't know about you, but I know people who would go to Charles de Gaulle Airport, for instance, who would fly to London for the day, when we used to fly easily, long time ago, come back, don't even remember at which floor they left their car. I'm sure it never happened to you. I'm talking about other people to whom this type of things happen. So on one hand, you have Juan Manuel Fangio, who's driving at 205 kilometers per hour, who's able to see and to decode spectators' behavior. And on one hand, you have people who would leave their car in an airport. They don't even remember where exactly in the parking. And then there's most of us sitting in between. So we can work with other people. This is what we call the wisdom of crowd, to go a little bit towards being sensitive to weak signals. And by the way, if we are not, and there's nothing wrong with it, we should get on our team people who see things that other people do not see. This is what we call things which are below radar screen. It's not that because we are good or bad or mean. No, simply we don't have this capacity to look below radar screen. We don't have enough vision, wide vision, to have a big screen. We have a small screen. We are over-focused on the task. We are only talking to our clients, only to our customers, and anything outside of that, which is the real world, doesn't exist. This gentleman, Harry DeGoes, was working at Shell, and he wrote a book called Long Living Organization. And he said long living organization have three pillars. One is that they are financially conservative. I mean, they're in time of crisis. They have enough cash to sustain the crisis. And we saw lots of people in the recent crisis where they would probably be going soon bankrupted if they had not been bankrupted yet, or they have to borrow money and borrow money with expensive rates to sustain the crisis. But those who are financially conservative, they can do much better. Have deeply embedded and shared value that are a guide to an action, like Johnson & Johnson. If you wake up somebody from Johnson & Johnson at 4 o'clock in the morning, shaking him or her, and ask him, what do you do at Johnson & Johnson? They will tell you, we are in the business of improving people's quality of life. We are not on the supply chain. We are not on the luxury business. We are not the transportation. We are not in oil and gas. We are really focused on improving people's quality of life. And this is called baby powder, Johnson Oil, Tylenol, Simply Sleep, all these nice products that we know, but we're very focused, and this is linked to our brand. Or a third pillar would be they are skilled at peripheral vision. Like who? Like Procter & Gamble. If you ask somebody in Procter & Gamble, what type of business are you in? They will tell you, we are in the business of making option fast, which making option fail fast, often quick and cheap. We try so many things at P&G. We know that most of them won't work. There's nothing wrong with that. But our duty is to be lucid enough to kill the option before the option becomes too expensive. So at P&G, we try so many things. If they succeed, we make stars out of them. If they don't succeed, we kill the option before the options becomes too costly. The more an option becomes costly, the more our capacity to withdraw from this project and to pull the plug, as I call it, becomes an issue. So, and the biggest reason, of course, you understand, is the sunk costs. The more we invest, the more we get committed, the harder it is to pull back. And the sunk costs come from the oil and gas. If some people in French, sunk, noyé, under the water. So it's a cost that we cannot recuperate, which is lost forever. And it comes from the oil and gas, because in the oil and gas, the more you drill, the more you invest, the hardest it is to say, I failed. So just keep an eye on your sunk costs, and keep an eye and be lucid that the more you invest in sunk costs, the less freedom you have to go back. Okay, so let me take you through, I would say, 5-6 strategies of influence or engaging human being. And this will explain to us why is it complex to do deals, because very often we don't understand the way people either function in their heart, or in their brain, or in their guts. And decision-making are a mix of all of that, of the brain, the heart, and the guts, and that's what makes things complex. So this is the brain. And when we make an offer which is fair or unfair, different part of the brains react. So when we make a fair offer, this part of the brain will say, great, let's look at planning. Fair offers means value creation. Planning means value capture. We are creating a big pizza, a big pie, great, but then who gets what in this pie? If we make an unfair offer, two other part of the brain will react. One part will say disgust, this is unfair, and the other one will say conflict mode, disgust and conflict mode. Believe me, once people are in disgust and conflict mode, you cannot do anything about it. Very hard to come back. You have to change people. Because if people are in disgust and conflict mode and you tell them, the Pope is Catholic, they will tell you maybe not. The sun comes out of the east, maybe not today. And they block completely. So Turkeys do not vote for Thanksgiving. If you want people to go an extra mile, they have to perceive you from minute one as being fair. To be honest with you, when you are in negotiation, it is too late to give a perception of fairness. You have to build this fairness brand all through your career. So when you sit at the table, you are kind to people, fair to them, but tough on issues, and people will accept. And we have in research, decades of research, Air France in 1989 was almost bankrupted. And you can look at the case written by my colleagues, Manzoni and Barsou on fair process and many others, that people are willing to take a cut if they think that it's a fair process and that everybody has been treated equally with transparency, empathy, and so on. Home insulation. So this is number one, and let me take you through 5 of them, and then you will understand. Some of you have seen this, some haven't. It is just to put it all together and to give a comprehensive understanding of how people work, or at least brain. So if you tell people, if you fix this window, you'll be saving so much per day. Maybe some people will do it, some people won't do it. But if you tell them, if you don't, you'll be losing so much per day. Guess what? People are much more sensitive to losses than they are to gains. And Jamie Connors used to say, I hate much more to lose than I like to win. I hate much more to lose than I like to win, which means that when I win a set, as Jamie Connors, not myself, not Sam, I'm happy. If I lose a set, I'm very unhappy. And it's the same thing with salaries. If you give people a bonus, they're happy. If you take money out of them, they're really unhappy. And there's this, S shape, the rate of diminishing return, that people can be happier and less happy with money and less unhappy. But the negative one is really steep. So people are loss averse. And they hit losses much more than they enjoy gain, which also means as leaders, if I can take just a second or two outside of my topic of today, extra money for some people doesn't buy happiness. Less money for some people would buy misery. So we should be sensitive on that. And this is engagement rule number 1, the power of loss aversion. Losses loom larger than gains. Number 2 is a trip to the zoo. This is not my work. This is the work of some other people who shared this with us. And they were working with delinquent kids, and they wanted parents to supervise the trip to the zoo where delinquent kid would be eventually not going to jail if they do public work. And they wanted people to come and supervise these delinquent kids to a zoo. And then they went to a church looking for people who are happy to support delinquent kid and be with them in the zoo. I think it was in Boston area or Chicago area. And they asked people, would you accept to supervise delinquent kids at the zoo once per week for 3 weeks or 4 weeks? And everybody said, no way. Only very few people accepted, actually. And very often those who accept are people who are either have no time, have extra time, or have no job, or have very modest situations. And anyway, this is not enough. And apparently what our colleagues did is that they went to another church and they used another strategy, and they increased a little bit their expectations, saying, would you accept to supervise delinquent kids at the zoo every day for 6 months? Which was a huge commitment. And everybody said, no way, this is too much. And then they said, what about only once per week for 3 weeks, which was the initial demand. And it went from 10 to 80%, which means two things, which means that this is the power of aspirational opening offer. When we exaggerate a little bit, anything better than expected is considered good news because we're moderating it in our news. But it also means other thing. It means that there is a very, very fine line between influencing, engaging stakeholders and manipulating them. And it's up to us to decide where our ethics stop. The same line exists between being confident and being arrogant, or being hard of hearing and being deaf, or being perseverant and being stubborn. So there is always a thin line. I remember when I was in the military, there was also another thin line, and this is between being prepared and being ready. So lots of people can be prepared. You're prepared to go to war or to maneuver with scenario 1, 2, 3, 4. You go to maneuver scenario 5 occurs. You were prepared, but you were not ready. So please keep an eye as we go on these fine lines and try to see which parts I want to belong to. I want to be confident. I don't want to be arrogant. I want to be hard of hearing and resilient, but I don't want to be deaf. I want to be perseverant, but I don't want to be stubborn. And ideally, we should go from being prepared to being ready. Which one makes you happier? You're walking down the street and you find a $20 bill, or scenario B, you're walking down the street, you find $10 bill. The next day, you're doing something entirely different. You find another $10 bill. And most of us, if I do some polling, and I will not, will go with scenario B. We want more. We try to be rational, and we want to enjoy much more. Actually, economically speaking, scenario A is much better because you can take the $20 bill, you put it in the bank, and you gain a day of interest rate. And the other day, instead of looking for another bill, you just enjoy yourself. But actually, human beings are irrational, and most of people will go with B. And if I give you the negative one, the downside, it's exactly the same thing. You open your wallet and you discover you have lost $20 bill. Scenario B, you open your wallet, you discover you have lost $10 bill. The following day, doing something entirely different, you lose another $10 bill. And if I give you a poll, also people will be going with the scenario B. More losses harm and impact much more than one big loss. So to go to the complex negotiation and to make the bridge, if you have good news to announce in negotiation, split them. We can give you a better delivery date, better quality, better payment terms, split them. If you have bad news, put them all together and just do one concession. So good news in negotiation, split them and ask for a different trade-off as you split them. Bad news, put them all together, share them, and you'll be willing to pay only one concession, okay? And this is the power of combining losses and separating gains. Lots of small win, one lump sum loss. Market research, this was also done by some colleagues, and they wanted to do some market research, and they wanted to send a questionnaire, and the questionnaire had no financial incentive. So you can send it to people, tell them, you can reply or not reply. This is a questionnaire, and they got very low response rate. And then they decided to do it in a much more rewarding part. And they said, if you fill out the questionnaire, you return it to us within a month, then we will be sending you a check of $50. This check is like money. You can put gas with it, go to Disneyland or buy popcorn, whatever. It's real money. But in a month, if you do it, we'll send it to you. If and only if, as we say, and they get some return. But that what really worked apparently is just to go outside of the box and to be creative and to pre-send $1 bill telling the people, we know that you have to reply, and by replying you need to buy a stamp. The stamp costs $1, or at least at that time it used to be $1. So this is $1 upfront. And apparently the rate of return became much, much higher. And the idea is that when people have an upfront, they feel indebted to you. So there is this feeling that there's $1 and I need to go back, and it works with everybody. So you see, the $1 could be much more powerful than $50 eventually, because it is an upfront concession. And this is what we call a pick. It's positive, immediate, and certain. So a pick has also lots of value, and this is exactly why most of the people going to buy second-hand car would take cash with them, because when the seller sees cash, it's a pick on the table, and they're willing to make a big concession. Okay, so this is another engagement rule: the power of immediate recognition or concession, what we call the pick. It's positive, immediate, and certain. Infomercial, this is also the work of some other colleagues, and apparently they were looking at the way operators manage people. So in the US, and now it's becoming more and more often in Europe, especially when we were confined. Some people are still confined, and you're buying lots of things online, getting delivered. Retail business was inaccessible for some time in lots of the world. I think when I looked at the figures, out of 7 billion people, close to 5 billion were completely confined of some kind of lockdown. So this created another way to consume, another way to behave, another way to buy. And when we look at the behavior of people in front of operators, our colleagues shared this with us. It's you can say, this is a fantastic kitchen equipment, this is a fantastic sport equipment. Now operators are waiting for your call. And then you see this is not very dynamic. Operators are waiting for your call. You call, you don't call, they're just waiting. Another way of doing is to say, if operators are busy, keep the line. This will not last more than 60 seconds. What is the message we're signaling here? The message we're signaling here, this is a very successful product. We are confident that we'll have lots of calls, but you know what? We are staffed accordingly. So keep the line, it is 60 seconds. When you give people the time frame, people can understand how to manage their energy. So I would like to make a link with another episode that most of you ignore, but it's very important when you have been to the military. This is one of the things we have been taught. Just before the D-Day, 6th of June, 1944, at midnight 10, a few gliders carrying commandos for the 6th Airborne Division, the British one, 3 gliders with 60 men each. And those gliders were asked to land at night and to capture 2 bridges, one called le Pont de Bénouville Bridge, and one called the Pont de Ranville Bridge. And these British commandos managed to land just on time and to capture the 2 bridges in 15 minutes. And they send a signal to London saying ham and jam, or jam and ham, meaning we captured both. But when we look at the instruction giving to the commander of this operation, who was commanding the 180 people in the 3 gliders, it was very, very simple. Capture the bridges and hold until relieved. Hold until relieved. When? We don't know. Eventually, he was relieved next day by Lord Lovett and a division of the Special Air Service who had landed by sea on Sword Beach, one of the 5 landing beaches in Normandy, and they made the junction with those their colleagues who captured the bridges the night before. And the funny thing in the episode, nothing to do with the negotiation really, but this is what we call the signaling effect, that when Lord Lovett landed on Sword Beach, and to make sure that his colleagues and comrades who captured the bridges know that he's coming to rescue them, he asked his Piper bag musician, Bill Millen, to start playing what we call the Millen Lament, Lord Lovett Lament, just to send the signal, hold on, we are coming. Coming back here, the worst thing is to give a task to people without the time frame. So people don't know how to manage their energy. But if you tell them, if operators are busy, keep the line, this should not last more than 60 seconds, people get the double message. It's a successful product, and I know that anyway, it's only 60 seconds. And this is the power of social proof. What is the picture you are painting to the other side? These are also how to anchor people in decision, and why is negotiation so complex. So you're buying a computer, is 2,000 euros, but the salesperson, a friend of yours, and gives you a tip. This computer is in sale in a shop 20-minute drive away. What kind of discount would make it worth the drive? And if you ask people, they would tell you probably 20% of 2,000, right? Which is 200 to 400 euros. And then you ask another cohort of people, other participants, you're buying a calculator and it's 50 euros. The salesperson, the same one, is also a good friend of yours, and he gives you a tip. This calculator is in a sale in a shop 20-minute drive away. What kind of discount would make it 20-minute drive? And guess what? You get exactly the same type of answer, 10%, 20% discount, which means 5 to 10 euros. So some people are taking the trip for 200 to 400 euros. Some other people, the same, are taking the trip for 5 to 10. It's not that people are irrational, it's that people get anchored. They want to feel rational, so they reply depending on the anchoring, what we just gave them. And this is also something we should be taking into consideration. Human beings want to feel rational. By definition, human beings are irrational. Because of emotion, because of biases, overconfidence, over-optimistic, loss averse, we hate risk, we are over-focused, we only see what we see, and so on. Plus, the worst among them, which bridges negotiation to safety when it comes to irrationality, it's called "this does not happen to me." That type of problems only happen to other people. And when it happens to you, you just found out that you are also part of the other people, okay? So just watch out the anchoring bias and the human biases under pressure, social pressure, religious pressure, financial, and so on. We can really take not good decision, and we are 100% confident that we just did is fantastic. And this is the power of reference point, judgment regarding cost, revenues, values, etc., are shaped by arbitrary comparison. They're not real pragmatic comparison, but we want to feel rational, so we take these decisions. The last one is this one, insight from Donald Rumsfeld. You know, Donald Rumsfeld was the Secretary of Defense during the Iraq War, and he engaged the US in a war in Iraq. Well, the US, I think he engaged the world, not France, but he engaged the world in a war in Iraq. And then he said, and by the way, I have the video if you think I'm bluffing or inventing things, because it's so striking. We know that Bin Laden is either in Afghanistan or elsewhere or dead. Because as we know, there are known knowns, there are things we know. We also know there are knowns unknowns. This is to say that we know there are things we don't know, but there are also unknowns, the thing we don't know. And this is how they went to war in Iraq. I don't know about you, where you're calling from or joining from. Personally, I grew up in Cairo. I'm used to lots of crap talk, but this is pretty deep. On the other hand, you have the opposite. You have Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize in Physics, 1967. and an American physicist, Richard Feynman. And then when he was asked by the Congress to go and explain why the US Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, he said it's very easy to understand. If you take a piece of rubber, you dip it in warm water, 72 Fahrenheit, 22 Celsius, more or less, and you take it out, you try to bend it, it will bend. You take the same piece of rubber, you put it in a water of 32 Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius, it's so cold, you take it out, you try to bend it, it will break because the rubber became rigid. This is exactly what happened. That Tuesday morning, 28th of January, 1986, at 11 a.m. was extremely cold in Florida. When they launched the space shuttle, the manufacturer, the producer of the engine, Morton Thiokol, said, please do not launch. This is out of our zone of expertise. We have never done it before. Still, the NASA decided to launch because they only over-focused on the losses not to launch. And on top of that, they were overconfident. They only saw what they saw, and they didn't look at the data outside of their bank of knowledge. And they say, let's launch, and we know what happened later on. And one of the pressure, I think, social pressure on the NASA came from the fact that it was the first time they were taking a teacher to the space, Krista McAuliffe, and they have done so much publicity. And also the other pressure coming from the fact that Ronald Reagan, who got re-elected in 1985, told the NASA, from now on, you're not supposed to enjoy any federal subsidies or financing, you should be autonomous, which also meant that every no-go, no launch would cost a lot to the NASA, reputation-wise, financial-wise, leadership-wise, for those who got disappointed, and so on. So if you want to be credible, please stick to facts. No BS. And you know what? People will find it anyway. So this is the power of credibility. If you want to be credible, stick to facts. And by the way, my dear friends, there is nothing wrong with a confident, sorry, I don't know. I don't know. So if you don't know, just tell the people, sorry, I don't know. It's a confident, I don't know. And you can go back and look for the facts and share them. So to end up with 2 slides, this is your behavior, and this is the impact you have on your team. So before you go to negotiation, please ask yourself, who should be on the bus, or who should be out of the bus? And still inside the bus, you want to know who is sitting where. So this is very important when we do some kind of group negotiation committee. Who's sitting at the table and who's sitting where? Please watch out also the timing issues, what you're signaling. When the Vietnamese and the Americans decided to meet to negotiate the exit of Vietnam War, they picked Paris. So the venue of negotiation is important. And when they picked Paris, the American rented a hotel for 1 month, but the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, rented a villa for 2 years. What was the signaling to the American? Take all your time. By the way, all the prisoner of wars in Vietnam are all American. So you go back home and you bear with the pressure coming from families waiting for their son and brother and husband and father. The signaling effect and the timing. If you do it yourself, let me just walk here. It will create disengagement. If you are Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, it will breed inaction. If you're a workaholic, it will burn people out. If you are a rescuer, it will foster dependency on you. If you're a problem solver, it will kill initiative. So from time to time, we should just behave as human beings more than corporate citizen. We should step back and ask ourselves, what's my role in this negotiation? How much space should I give to the others? If I take all the space, I should have made it on my own. And you will be running out of energy. So please make sure you understand what's going on the table, before the negotiation table and after. And just to make you laugh, this is my last slide, and the slide goes as follows. I see that we have some colleagues joining from the Middle East and the Arab world. I could see Dubai and other countries where people speak Arabic. So this is a gentleman who has been appointed head of Coca-Cola in Saudi, one of the biggest consumption of Coca-Cola per capita. He doesn't speak any Arabic. He's French or German. He decides to promote Coca-Cola by posters. So a guy is dead in the desert. He drinks Coca-Cola. He starts running. 1 month after, the company goes bankrupted. What's wrong with my message? Well, people in Saudi Arabia read from right to left. So basically, the gentleman is running in the desert. He drinks Coca-Cola and he dies. It's not only to make you laugh. It's also to make you be sensitive to the message you're giving to people. Some countries are high context, some other are low context. If you're dealing with a company which is high context, like the Middle East or some countries, Southeastern Asia, everything is implicit. In French word, there's the word sous-entendu. And if you're dealing with people from Scandinavian or from the Netherlands, be very blunt, very bold about it. Otherwise, the message either gets misunderstood or people will misbehave. So the agile negotiator is also the person who knows how to manage his people energy, who will foster this culture to bring bad news up soon enough at the table. And in case he is stuck in negotiation, he knows how to live with dignity. So to end up this talk, I would like to give you 3 advice. Please go to negotiation using your intelligence, the intelligence of other people, but also the intelligence of the situation. When you come to the table of negotiation, few things will happen and you have to grasp them if you are sensitive to weak signal. So use your intelligence, other people's intelligence, and the intelligence of the situation. Number 3, if you are a great negotiator, always go to negotiation with a card, a joker in your pocket, in case you need to withdraw with dignity. Because if you don't have a joker, a card to withdraw, probably you will be running into useless concessions under the financial pressure, the social pressure, the professional pressure. So always have a joker to leave with dignity. The way you're going to leave the negotiation table, it's exactly the way you're going to re-enter. So make sure you leave with dignity, not leaving too much or not making too much useless concession. And the last thing, please always go to negotiation with a smile on your face and a gun in your pocket. You don't have to be mean or threatening to people. Just be sure that you are not intimidated by somebody who has a gun or a knife. And please make sure you want to be kind to people who have a smile. So go to negotiation with a smile on your face and a gun in your pocket. Please remember, and this is my last statement because I'll be spending 1 hour now. The great negotiator has 3 allies. 1 is time, always buy time if you can, looking for information. The other one is distance, how to step back, go to my secure base before restriking. And the third one, and the most important and probably the most challenging, is your own moderation. Not to overreact, and how to maintain your composure under stress. It is almost noontime in Switzerland. I was very happy to share my humble insight with you. I hope one of them will make sense to you. If one of them makes sense to you, this is a pretty good return on investment. I wish you a great summer. Keep negotiating, enjoy, and stay safe, you and your family. Thank you very much, everyone.